This is Greater MSP Business with Cindy Brucato.
In the private school system in our region, one school stands out. Groves Academy in St. Louis Park, Minnesota's only school dedicated to students with learning disabilities and attention disorders. Groves Academy sprung from the needs of a group of parents who more than 40 years ago decided to create a customized environment for students with certain challenges. Today, an extremely high teacher-to-student ratio of 5-to-1 allows Groves teachers to create individualized teaching plans for students at grades 1 through 12. John Alexander is head of school at Groves Academy. John, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
What kind of student does Groves Academy serve?
All of our students are diagnosed with a specific learning disability and/or attention deficit disorder.
And is there a certain kind of student that is a better fit for the Groves learning system?
Yeah, really, well, the ideal student, and the majority of our students are dyslexic, so they have a issue with written language, both reading, spelling, and producing written language.
How does a parent who needs your services, how does he or she find out about Groves Academy?
Well, our website's a great resource, and in terms of getting services, whether it's at Groves or in their local public school, we have a roadmap to help parents get there, and they could just get onto the website or email me, and I'd be happy to send that along.
You have an amazing student-teacher ratio. How does this assist in what you're trying to do to help these students?
Yeah, our ratio is about 5-to-1. So the kids are getting very specific, individualized attention with highly trained teachers. And we can really sort out what their issues are. It's a diagnostic prescriptive approach. So we're always diagnosing where they're breaking down and then prescribing a specific intervention to meet that need.
So let's take an example, a dyslexic student. What does one of your teachers do to help this student learn better?
Sure. So dyslexic kids, by definition, it's not a problem with intellect. These are very bright kids who have a neurological wiring issue that prevents them from learning in a traditional way. So our teachers are highly trained in understanding structures of language and word analysis, and we give a very structured, sequential, explicit instruction that will close the gap between that potential and that achievement.
What percentage of your students graduate?
100%.
100% graduate.
And I should make note, though, we're not a school that holds on to students for the entirety of their school experience. Our mission, our goal is to mainstream kids back into mainstream traditional education as quickly as we can close that gap. So the average stay of a Grove student is about 3.5 to 4 years. That said, there are students who will come to us in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and stay with us through graduation.
So given that so many students get mainstreamed after a stay at Groves Academy, how do then they function later on through regular public schools or going on to higher education?
You know, there are different facets of the program. One is to really work on developing the skills to close the gap between potential and actual school achievement. The other is to build a real explicit understanding for the kids of their own learning profile so that they can then advocate for themselves when they get out in the mainstream. And they do that very well. The students who leave Groves, it's often said, are better prepared going into either other independent schools or public schools. They're better prepared than the mainstream student just because they've learned how to become a good student, what it takes to be a student, how you stay organized, and to know yourself as a student, your own strengths and weaknesses so that you can bridge those gaps. In addition, we really tout and train kids in assistive technology. That can be a great leveler of the field for kids with learning disabilities.
Now, you describe many of your students as being highly intelligent. Do you also deal with students who are less capable of learning?
No, that's our program, you know, is pretty fast-paced, and you have to have a certain minimum, you know, horsepower in terms of that. And so with that, we're very selective in the students that we accept, and it's a very thorough application process to become a student. And we can really then determine, you know, whether our program is going to be successful for that student.
What's the tuition?
We have 3 different divisions. We have an elementary, a middle, and a high school, and the tuition varies from $23,000 to $25,000.
And what do you offer families who can't afford the tuition?
We give out a lot of financial aid. About a third of our student population gets financial aid, and we give out almost $1 million a year.
It appears that the public is much more aware of learning disabilities than it has been in the past. How has that affected what Groves Academy does?
It's great. It's not only increased our inquiry base from the Twin Cities, and I should note that we have students come from as far away as Rochester every day to get the services, and we have students who move from out of state to Minneapolis just to come to Groves. So it's really taken a lot of the stigma away from students because it's out in the public now. We give a lot of workshops and conferences pro bono to the general public, and I think that helps dispel the stigma as well. And then finally, we have a learning center that meets the needs of between 500 and 1,000 kids, depending on the year.
Thanks again, John Alexander from Groves Academy. For Greater MSP Business, I'm Cindy Bricado.